What the hell do you mean Kitty's been 14 this entire time? Welcome back to Reading Every X-Men Comic Ever, the series where I also read Excalibur. That's right, this week we are headed back to Britain to read issues 20 through 31 of Excalibur. These issues cover the back half of the Cross-Time Caper arc, which we started, 2 months ago, as well as just a bunch of other one-off stories. Those stories end up making this book feel kind of Silver Age-y, as the plots are just crazy, and there's just a general lack of world building or character development or exploration, really. But I'll get into that later. Before I begin, though, I just want to note that I'm not going to go through each issue sequentially. I'm going to start with the back of the Cross-Time Caper arc, then I'll cover all of the other issues at the end. It'll just make the video flow better, and you'll kind of get why when we get to the later issues. But without further ado, let us begin. As discussed in the last Excalibur video, this arc's name is kind of a misnomer, as the team isn't really traveling through time, more so traveling through dimensions. And where we left off, the team had just defeated, kind of, a version of Jamie Braddock, and Kitty accidentally got trapped back home with no way of finding her teammates or even knowing if they are alive. Luckily, they are, and are now in a world that is very similar to their own, except for one key difference. The Americans had lost the Revolutionary War, and for a lot of our time in this world, we follow Captain Britain's doppelganger, Crusader X. Anyways, Rachel gets involuntarily connected with this world's Jean Grey, who's being psychically attacked by, surprise surprise, Mastermind, and also the Shadow King this time. This Jean is unfortunately killed, and Rachel swears revenge, which she doesn't really get. Hey, but at least she stops this Iron Man from starting another revolution. I guess that's good? From there, they go to a world where the population has never stopped expanding or polluting. We get to see alternate versions of Doug and Ileana, as well as more Excalibur doppelgangers. This arc finally ends, however, with the gang being forced to Otherworld by Saturnine so she can fix Widget, and then tell the team to go home and stop fucking shit up across the multiverse. Meanwhile, once they do get home, Big G has shown up and is looking to snuff out the Phoenix Force once and for all, because its destructive power potential, but upon attempt realizes its folly. Also, Roma the Watcher and Death are all show up to watch, I guess. Meanwhile, Kitty is lamenting about how she is once again alone and how her default state is now phasing. However, she's taken in by Courtney Ross, and with nowhere else to go and no real family left, she decides to go back to school. Also, we celebrate her 15th birthday. Her 15th birthday. Now, if you remember a while back, I covered Special Edition X-Men. And while that was mainly a reprint of giant-size X-Men, the backup story in it featured Kitty's 14th birthday. Now, based on my research, I figured out where the hell Special Edition X-Men takes place. And that is between issues 167 and 168 of Uncanny X-Men. As that is the only time this version of the X-Men, this version of the New Mutants, and the Starjammers are all in the same place. Which means that Catherine Kitty Pryde experiences the events of Kitty Pryde and Wolverine, Secret Wars 2, Mutant Massacre, Fantastic Four vs. the X-Men, Fall of the Mutants, the forming of Excalibur, and Inferno, plus any of the other arcs she's in Uncanny that I'm forgetting, all at the age of 14. Jesus Christ. How are you not more fucked up? Chuck was right. You should have gone with the New Mutants. You're a literal child. Holy shit. Anyways, comics bullshit aside, while I did like this arc as a whole, the ending of the Cross-Time Caper felt a little rushed and underwhelming. I mean, the entire last issue was just the team fighting Captain Britain variants, trying to get to Saturnine, who summoned them, only for her to just show up at the very end and just be like, yeah, your robot's good, you can get the fuck out of here now. They don't even ask or attempt to find anything about Kitty's whereabouts. I mean, I guess they kind of couldn't ask one because Phoenix was disguised as Kitty the entire time, so she wouldn't be taken into custody. But still, some attempt to find some information on Kitty's whereabouts would have been nice. Not to mention, we usually get 2 issues on each world, but right at the end here, instead we have 1 issue on this weird, hyper-industrialized world, and 1 on Otherworld. But I think having 2 issues on Otherworld would have been way better with a lot more story potential. While it was nice to see Doug and Ileana, even if they weren't the real ones, that story was fairly unnecessary in the grand scheme of things. And I think there were a lot more story options and story potential that could have been expanded upon, threads that have existed since the series beginning if you just stayed in Otherworld for another issue. I mean, we still don't know why, really, Saturnine wants Rachel. There could have been something there with Rachel getting into custody and they have to break her out, or something, maybe trying to find where Kitty is and getting no information because they're being sabotaged because Saturnine doesn't want them to know. There's a lot there, I think, with plot devices that you could have done on Otherworld, and we just didn't get that, and I think that's disappointing. Despite my issues with Excalibur's story, I really did like Kitty's story, what little we get. I do think she is being manipulated in some fashion by this Courtney Ross Saturnine variant, but I'm not entirely sure what the end goal is. I do think a lot of Kitty's emotions and feelings she expresses are very fair concerning her situation, and her choice to go back to school kind of makes sense and is an interesting one. So I'm excited to see where it goes, if we see any of it really at all. Actually, her leaving in issue 25 is the last time we see her in the book in present day. All of her other appearances in later issues, those issues are set in the past, pre-Cross-Time Caper. Speaking of which, Excalibur 20 and 26 are the 2 issues here that take place before the Cross-Time arc begins at the end of issue 11. However, Moira's appearance complicates things, because if you remember, she gets swapped with her Nazi counterpart in issue 4 and doesn't return until issue 11, right before the team blasts off into the multiverse, meaning there is no point in time in which Moira, Widget, and Kitty are able to be in the same place before the arc begins. This doesn't really matter, but it kind of does, and it just kind of bugs me, because continuity, even though I know continuity doesn't really matter in comics. But still, kind of annoying. Regardless, the main plot of issue 20 has some dude named the Demon Druid appear, and Kitty figures out that he just wants to go home, so she makes a device that allows him to go home. That doesn't really matter, because what's really important in this issue is Brian being an even larger asshole than usual. It's revealed in issue 26, though, that it turns out to be Mastermind, who switched places with Captain Britain. Don't ask how, I don't know how that works. Those are 2 very different people with very different powers. I digress. Mastermind was looking for another hit of that sweet, sweet Phoenix Force, and this time tried to manipulate Rachel by believing he was Franklin Richards from her time, so he could steal the Phoenix from her. Needless to say, it doesn't work. I'll be honest. When 26 started, I was kind of hoping it would be a tie-in to the annual event we just covered, Days of Future Present, seeing as it also deals with Franklin Richards from that future timeline. But alas, it does not, and also the timeline stuff just really wouldn't work out, but that's besides the point. I did not expect to see Mastermind again, much less here in Excalibur. I will say, I do think turning Mastermind into what is essentially a junkie who is looking to get back to the high of being one with the universe is a really fun twist for the character, because all of his previous revenge schemes on Chuck and the X-Men have not worked for him. And in a way, he gets his wish at the end, so there's something at least. But overall, and continuity aside, these 2 were fine. I enjoyed 26 way more than 20, but I think that's just because there was just more there to grasp onto within that story. 20 was very, very simple. The remaining 5 issues are all one-off stories. Excalibur are called to interact with a possible dimensional traveler and incidentally get swept into Jamie's reality warping bullshit. Brian and Megan go out for a night alone and encounter a woman who has a penchant for greed-based illusions. The team attempts to help the Power Pack by getting flung into a dream state by Nightmare, but it's all undone by Franklin Richards. Megan seemingly turns into a vampire, so Alistair calls Doctor Strange to help out Excalibur, and Nightcrawler attempts to go on vacation, but crash lands on an island that turns out to be the son of Krakoa. Issue 27 is the only one that I really felt like might have some ties to later issues, considering it's about Jamie Braddock. Everything else felt very contained. And here is where I feel like you can kind of see what I mean when I mentioned before about how the series is feeling kind of Silver Age-y, even beyond the more episodic nature of these stories, which I associate more with the Silver Age. I think the lack of just general subplots and character arcs in most of them just make them feel a bit more one note overall. That said, that doesn't necessarily mean they were bad. Overall, I think they were fine for the most part. I enjoyed 30 and 31 the most. 30 in particular, I found was really fun and is told in a very interesting way, kinda in media res, with the inciting incident having already happened, and the reader learning about what that incident was and what's happened via Alistair informing his sister, while the rest all deal with the aftermath of it. Also, I just enjoy it when Strange shows up. Other than that, though, I don't feel like there's really anything that notable about any of the other issues that I really want to talk about. That's all for this week, though. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did like it, please hit the like button and comment your thoughts down below. Next week, I am once again putting off Extinction Agenda, and instead going back to Wolverine, as well as starting a new ongoing. So subscribe, hit the bell, and I will see you then.